Today, I am wanting to share with you some of my favorite beef recipes that you can cook up in your crock pot. When I think of crock pot, my mind automatically goes to all of those chicken meals, but y'all, we can cook up beef recipes just as easy, and I'm going to show you how. Y'all know that crock pot cooking is one of my favorite ways of cooking, so today I'm going to make it easier for you and show you some of my faves. So join me as I cook up some super hearty and delicious crock pot meals that I know you all are going to love. Let's get started. To start us off, we're going to use some sirloin steak. You guys can use chuck roast, whatever type of beef that you're really wanting. Flank steak is really good as well. I'm going to put in about 1.5 pounds, and then I'm going to put that at the bottom of my crock pot, and then to a medium-sized bowl, I'm actually going to put in 1 cup of beef broth, and then 1/2 cup of soy sauce, 1/3 cup of brown sugar, 1 tablespoon of sesame oil, or I just have this like stir-fry oil. I think it's going to serve the same purpose. And then I have 3 cloves of garlic, or 1 tablespoon of garlic, minced garlic. And then I'm just going to give that a good stir. I just want to make sure that that brown sugar is stirred through properly. Mine was not quite stirred through, or there was just some brown sugar on the very bottom. So make sure you get that stirred through really well. And then I'm just going to go ahead and put that right on top of our steak. And then I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that the brown sugar is all there and it's not sticking to the bottom of my bowl. I'm going to kind of mix that around, make sure all of that sauce and the sugar is evenly distributed. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the lid on, and then I'm just going to let that cook on a high heat for about 4 hours. Okay, now that it is done cooking, my steak looks absolutely beautiful. So I'm just going to kind of mix it around, make sure everything is nice and cooked through. And then I'm going to put 1/4 cup of cornstarch in with 1/4 cup of water. Give that a good mix, and then put that in with our beef just to give it more of a thicker sauce. If you guys don't like a thicker sauce, that's totally fine. You don't have to add as much cornstarch. It just really depends on how thick the sauce is that you're wanting and that you're kind of after. And then you want to give this a good stir, and it will thicken up pretty fast. And then I'm actually going to go ahead and put in my broccoli. You guys can use about 3 to 4 cups, or even like a 14-ounce bag. You guys can do frozen, or you can do fresh. It's kind of whatever you want to do. I just used fresh, so I'm just putting in my broccoli on top of my beef, and then I'm going to let that cook for another 45 minutes to an hour. I just want to make sure that that broccoli is nice and cooked through, and my sauce is this lovely thick sauce. So I'm going to let that cook for another hour. And then after about an hour, it should be absolutely delicious. You guys can add in some sesame seeds if you desire. I don't really have sesame seeds on hand, so I just left it as is. You guys, this was super, super tender. My roast, my steak was super tender, and then I just put that on top of some rice, and I made sure there was lots of sauce with my rice and my broccoli and beef. Y'all, this was a super hearty and delicious dinner, and then I served it with a roll on the side as well. Up next, we're going to be making some crock-pot Philly cheesesteak sandwiches. So we're going to need some hoagie buns, we're going to need some Worcestershire sauce, and then we're going to need some seasonings. And then I just have some beef fillets because I had them in my freezer, and I need to use those up, and they were super, super tender. But you guys can use some flank steak or sirloin steak, whichever you guys choose. So at the bottom of my crock pot, I'm going to go ahead and slice up my fillets really, really thin. And then I'm going to put in 2 cups of beef broth, and then I just threw in some peppers and then a whole onion. You want to make sure that those are all nicely and thinly sliced. That will go really, really well with our sandwiches. And then I'm just going to put in a teaspoon of salt, and then a teaspoon of black pepper. And then I'm also going to be putting in 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, and then a teaspoon of Italian seasoning. And then I'm just going to go ahead and put the lid on, and I'm going to let that cook on low for 6 to 8 hours, or you can definitely do 3 to 4 hours. And I forgot to put in my Worcestershire sauce, so I'm going ahead and put in a tablespoon right then, and then put the lid on. And once everything is done cooking, I'm going to go ahead and get started on my hoagie buns. So I just want to place these with the middle of it up, and then I'm just going to place these all over this pan that I have. And I really only needed about 4 of these because my kids are still pretty small and they only ate about half of one, because these are pretty big hoagie buns. I love these hoagie buns. You get them from Walmart and they are so delicious. They are so soft. And then I'm just going to put some butter on all of these, and then I'm going to put them in the oven at 400 degrees for about 10 minutes. I just want to make sure that everything is nice and toasty. And now that my bread is nice and toasted, I'm just going to ladle this up. I did go ahead and thicken this just a little bit with some cornstarch and a little bit of water. I just want my beef and onion mixture to get a little bit more thicker. So here I am just adding just a little bit of some cornstarch and water and getting that thickened up. You can definitely probably just do 2 or even 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. It just kind of depends on how thick that you're wanting your mixture. And then I have some sliced provolone cheese that I'm going to put right on top of our hoagie buns. And that is going to be a delicious add-on for our hoagie buns, making our sandwiches super delicious. And if you are wanting something really cheesy, you could put provolone cheese on both sides, and that was phenomenal. The added cheese was absolutely phenomenal. And now I'm just going to go ahead and ladle this up, and that's it. I'm just going to ladle it up, close our sandwiches, and we're going to have some delicious sandwiches. And here is our sandwiches all put together. Look how lovely that cheese looks on top. And you don't have to do sliced cheese. You can definitely do shredded. I think that would be delicious as well. And I paired ours with some chips and some mac and cheese. I thought that would be absolutely delicious with our sandwiches. Up next is some beef ribs. You guys, you will fall in love with this crock-pot meal. It was so good. Normally I do country pork ribs, but I had beef ribs and I wanted to get out of my freezer. So I'm going to make my rub. So I need 1 tablespoon of salt, a teaspoon of black pepper, a teaspoon of garlic powder, a teaspoon of dried oregano, 1 teaspoon of paprika, And then that is it. That's all that I need for my rub, and I'm just gonna go ahead and mix that together. And just so you guys know, this was a rub probably only good for maybe 1 to 2 ribs. So if you have more than that, you can double this recipe to make it go further. So I'm just going to mix this all together. And then I want to make sure that my ribs are nice and dry before putting my ribs on top of this mixture. But then I went ahead and just took my ribs and made sure that my ribs were generously covered in all of this rub. I did have about 3/4 a cup of water that I want to put at the very bottom of my crock pot before I put the ribs in. And so I'm just going to make sure that there's enough rubs, spices, and all of that good stuff all over my ribs. To put about a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce on it, and then you can definitely do some like liquid smoke as well. The recipe calls for some liquid smoke, but I had a major accident with our liquid smoke, so I don't have any currently. And then I'm also going to put a cup of barbecue sauce because this is what's going to make it taste absolutely delicious. And then I decided to put some onions on top of that to give it just a little bit more flavor. And then I am just going to let this cook on a high heat for about 5 hours. I want to make sure that those ribs are nice and tender. And then once it's done, this is what it's looking like. Absolutely delicious. It was so tender, you guys, so tender. I was really concerned about it being the beef ones because I don't really cook with beef a whole lot, like beef ribs a whole lot, but these were so tender. Put them in that juice. Oh my soul, absolutely amazing. I actually took the ribs and made some broth out of it as well, so it was kind of a win-win situation here. And then I paired ours with some corn and some mashed potatoes. It's super steamy, so the video is like fogging up my camera, but this is what it's looking like, and it was oh so divine. Up next is some crockpot beef stew. So here are all the ingredients that we're going to need for today's meal. So at the bottom of my crockpot, I'm going to put in some beef stew meat. You need about 2 pounds. I had closer to 3 pounds just because I wanted to use up the rest of the beef stew meat that I had in my freezer. I didn't want one little tiny package left to it's a little lonesome. And then I put in 2 cups of beef broth, and then 1 tablespoon of garlic powder, a teaspoon of black pepper, and then a teaspoon of salt. And then I didn't have any like beef bouillon or anything like that, so I just used some like tomato paste, I think that's what it is, like a tomato bouillon. I just used a teaspoon or a tablespoon of that and just sprinkled it everywhere, and it was totally fine. Beef stew usually has like a tomato base anyway, so I think that it was perfectly fine. And then I have some Worcestershire sauce. I need about a tablespoon of that. I'm gonna add some flavor there. And then of course we're gonna need some potatoes. I just had some red baby potatoes, and I had about 1.5 pounds. I'm also gonna use up all the rest. That's like all the carrots that I had left in the house. You need about 2 cups worth, and I just thinly sliced those. You definitely can do some celery. I think some celery would be really good. And then some onions, just to add some flavor for our beef stew. And then you're going to want to cook this on a low heat for 6 to 8 hours, or you can do high heat for about 4 hours. And then once it's done, y'all, this is what it's looking like. It was so good. I think this is probably my favorite meal that I made in this entire video. I love beef stew so much, but I haven't found a recipe where the beef stew like this, the beef comes out super tender. And this one, it did. It was so good. And then I'm just going to add like a little bit of a slurry. So I need 1/4 cup of water with 1/4 cup of cornstarch, and that's really gonna thicken it up. So that's what I'm doing right here. I'm doing 1/4 cup of water with 3 tablespoons of cornstarch, which is basically 1/4 cup of cornstarch. And then I'm just gonna give it a good stir and then put it in our crock pot to give it more of a thicker texture. I really love stew when it's a lot more thicker. When it's thinner, I just think it's more of like a soup. So you definitely want to add that cornstarch, and immediately it starts thickening up and looking absolutely delicious. I definitely think like a bay leaf or maybe some parsley and the celery would make it flavorful, and even more flavorful than what it is now. But you guys, this was so good. I put just a little bit more salt on top and then some pepper. This is what it's looking like. And then I did pair mine with some bread. I have some homemade bread here that I made. It was phenomenal. This last meal that I'm going to be sharing with you guys is a ground beef stroganoff. So I love doing these kind of things in the crock pot. It just makes life a little bit easier. And I did this on a Friday night, and so I really enjoy having a super easy meal on a Friday night. So I'm going to need 1 pound of ground beef, and I'm just going to ground it up until it's no longer pink in the middle. And then you can add some onions to it. I did not for this video, but definitely adding like 1/2 cup or a whole cup of onions would make it even more flavorful. And once it's done, I'm just going to go ahead and put that at the very bottom of my crock pot. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in 1 tablespoon of garlic and then some Worcestershire sauce. I just need about a tablespoon of that, or whatever your little heart desires, of course. I need 1 packet of this onion soup mix, and that's going to add some super delicious flavor. I love those onion soup mixes. They are delicious. And then I need 1 can of cream of mushroom soup. And then I need 1 cup of sour cream. You can do that here, or you can do it at the very end right before you put in your noodles. It really, I don't think, matters a whole lot. And then I'm going to need 1 cup of beef broth. And then I'm just going to go ahead and give that a good stir. Get all those ingredients mixed together nice and combined well through. And then once that's all good, then I'm going to go ahead and put the lid on and let that cook on a low heat for about 4 hours. And then once all of that is done cooking, this is kind of what it's going to be looking like. So I wanted to give that a really good stir. And then you can kind of do this one of 2 ways. I suggest not doing it the way that I did it. You're going to want to cook 8 ounces of egg noodles and then put it in the crock pot. And if it's still kind of runny, you can always add in some like a cornstarch slurry just to kind of thicken it up a little bit. I ended up putting the noodles in and then adding some beef broth and some water to make sure there was enough liquid to cook through. And then I ended up cooking this for another hour. I definitely suggest adding the noodles first, or cooking the noodles and then adding it instead of cooking it for like another hour in the crock pot. I just think it's easier just to have your noodles already ready to go, and then you are done after 4 hours. But I went ahead and added the noodles. I added a couple cups of beef broth and then I think 1 cup of water, and I did let this cook for another hour. And then this is what it looks like. But you guys, this was so creamy. It was very thick, very delicious. Look how thick and creamy that looks, you guys. So good. Top this with some parsley, and then we put this over like some mashed potatoes, and we paired it with a vegetable. And then I think we ended up having some bread with it, which was super, super delicious as well. But of course, you guys can do whatever your heart desires. This was a very delicious and hearty meal for our Friday night. Something that I definitely suggest doing if you love easy Friday night meals as much as I do. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this content. Thank you so much for sticking to the end. I will be having 2 videos up on the screen that YouTube suggests for you guys, so I hope that you guys will click on it if you guys enjoy watching videos just like this. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, y'all.